Hey everyone, Adam here from Northwest Rally Sports. Today I'm going to show you how to install our AVCS oil line kit. Here's everything included in our kit. Comes with a line, custom 12mm banjo, high-flowing 10mm banjo, and a cap, 4 12mm copper washers, and 2 10mm copper washers. This kit can be installed using basic tools. First thing we need to do is remove the air intake up to the turbo inlet hose. I'm going to do that now. Today we're doing the line install on a 2012 WRX. The newer WRXs and STIs have this floating bracket here. The purpose of the bracket is to give support to the coolant reservoir here and provide some anti-chafing protection for these wires. In order to get our custom banjo in, we have to modify this. There's a couple ways you can go about it. First one would be you could Dremel a little radius out of the edge here to allow for a socket to get down to your banjo bolt here. Another way is to remove the bracket completely, take it over to the bench and cut it right here, getting rid of this element. The third, and this is the way I do it, I protect the power steering lines with some like a welding glove or something like that, and then I cut vertically with a handheld sawzall. Basically, it's a little pneumatic sawzall I got from Harbor Freight for like 15 bucks, and I just cut through this, discard this part of the bracket, and now I'm free and clear to be able to finish the install. We're going to do that now. So I'm getting ready to cut. You want to make sure that you have some sort of protection. These are your power steering lines. You do not want to cut them. Always wear, hearing and eye protection before you cut anything. And as you're cutting, just make sure that you're staying away from the solenoid and the lines and everything, and just, use a steady hand and go as carefully as you can if you decide to cut it in the car. Easy as that. No damage to the line, no damage to the solenoid, we're good. So now that I've removed that bracket, I can get at the banjo bolt that feeds the AVCS on the passenger side cylinder head. Bolt will pop off pretty easy. Pull that guy out. Get both the copper washers out of there. Be sure to install 2 new crush washers, one underneath the banjo, just kind of look down, make sure it's all lined up, and one on your custom 12mm banjo fitting. And it should just finger thread in. If it's not threading in by hand, then something's wrong. Double check, never force it. And spec on this is 22 foot-pounds. If you don't have a torque wrench, we have found that 22 foot-pounds is 90 degrees from finger tight. Now that we've got this installed, we're going to move on to the back part of the line here. So now we need to remove this part of the line and cap off the hard line down here. You've got a break point, 2 17mm open-end wrenches. You can pop that loose, and then a 14 up here, and remove and discard this line. I'll do that now. Can be a little tight. On an extension. Pop that guy loose. There's your old banjo and your line. It's a big difference between our high flow banjo bolt and the OE bolt. They only provide one small opening, whereas we provide two. Now that we have that part of the line removed, we have to put our cap on, thread it on until it's tight, and then I'd set it to approximately 20 foot-pounds. Always support the bottom part of the line before you torque the top part. So the next step is optional. If you want to remove the screen from the feed banjo down below on the head, you can do that now. The way you have to do that is remove this bracket, pull the turbo coolant feed line slightly out of the way, and then remove that banjo bolt, pull it out. If there is a screen in there, remove it, clean the bolt, put on 2 new copper washers, replace it, torque that to also 22 foot-pounds. Once again, you can't get a torque wrench in there. We figured out that from finger tight, it's 90 degrees, so approximate as best you can. And I'll do that now. Now that I have the upper part of the line removed, now I have to remove the up-pipe bracket here so that I can get at the banjo bolt that feeds the hard line that eventually feeds this fitting. And I need to remove that banjo bolt and get the filter out of it. If you don't want to do this, then you can just skip this step. We recommend that you do for, better oil flow to your turbo. There's 2 14mm bolts that hold that bracket on, and 1 heat shield bolt. Down at the bottom here, it's a 10mm. So you'll have to remove that heat shield bolt so that you can move the heat shield out, and then loosen up the 14mm nut and 14mm bolt. Once you get those off, you have to work the bracket up and off of the stud, and just mind the coolant line that feeds the turbo. You don't want to be too mean with it, but you can wiggle it up and around, and then forward and out. Not too bad. Okay, now that I have the bracket out, I gotta get the 17mm banjo at the back of the passenger side cylinder head here. You can use a standard size 17. Sometimes I get away with using my modified 17. Either one will fit, but you just want to crack it loose, and then you should be able to just get it out of there using your fingers. So this banjo did not have a screen in it, so we didn't need to clear anything. It's always good to check, and then you always want to replace both your copper washers, one above and below the banjo fitting at the back of the head. I'm going to pop this all back together now. So once again, the torque spec on this is 22 foot-pounds, or 90 degrees from finger tight. You do spill a little bit of oil. It's unavoidable, so what I recommend is just a little bit of degreaser after you've tightened everything. Spray it down there and let it kind of rinse down, and it'll help prevent smoke, but generally it'll just burn off within 10-20 miles. Now we're going to put the bracket back on. Sometimes it's easier to use a magnet just to get this nut hooked onto the top of that stud. And then you can carefully start it with your extension. These two bolts you can torque to approximately 20 foot-pounds. I just get them nice and tight. And don't forget your heat shield, 10 millimeter, otherwise you will have a nasty rattle. Now we can put on our line. So you can see the 90-degree fitting over here meets up with our custom 12 mil banjo fitting. So go ahead and start on that side and don't just do finger tight, but allow it to articulate so it can move around until you get this guy set in. This part of the line runs underneath the wastegate arm, so you want to make sure you're not going over top, otherwise it'll wear through the line. Take your 10 millimeter high flow banjo and your 2 copper washers. One washer on the banjo, the other one underneath the banjo fitting. I find it easier to place the washer over the feed port on the turbocharger and then carefully align everything and drop it in. If you try to preload it, you'll find that you'll drop it, and that's no fun. So the torque spec on our high flow banjo bolt is 12 foot-pounds, and you need to support the line while you're torquing the banjo bolt. So I recommend a screwdriver or a pry bar, and just hold it so that it's centered, and then while you're supporting it, just give it a torque to 12 foot-pounds and you should be good. So once you tighten your high flow 10 millimeter banjo up here, you got to tighten your 90-degree fitting. I recommend supporting the line just like we did over there. From finger tight, you're going to go about 90 degrees. You'll know once it gets tight. This is a tapered seat, so it'll be tight. You shouldn't be able to move it. That's a good routing. Now we can put our intake back in. So now we're going to put the intake back together. This customer had a Cobb aftermarket intake. If you had a stock intake, you'd put your airbox in and then your inlet hose. Pretty simple. There's a few more components with the aftermarket Cobb kit. So we're going to start going through the process of putting that back together right now. Don't forget to plug in your MAF sensor before you put your top plate back on. Okay, so that's the job done. Got everything installed. Make sure everything's nice and tight. Double check your fittings. You know, no loose components or anything like that. You'll be good to go. As soon as you're done, you want to test fire. It's good to do it with 2 people. Have one person start the vehicle while another one's looking. That way, if there is a major leak or anything like that, you can catch it right away. You won't have too big of a mess and you won't starve the motor. Once you verify there are no leaks, take it for a drive, make sure it feels good, you're all done. So that's the install, pretty quick and easy. If you're having trouble, you can check our support page. We have instructions there, or you can give us a call. Thanks.